My husband's lover pushed me, pregnant, down the stairs. 5 minutes later, as I was bleeding on the floor, he refused to call a doctor. He leaned in and whispered, "You should get your tubes tied and adopt our baby." He thought he'd won. He thought he'd silenced me. But he didn't know my father is a general. He didn't know he'd just made his last mistake. The dress felt like a shroud, all sequins and silk, digging into my skin. At 3 months pregnant, I was already in that awkward stage where nothing fit, and the nausea was a constant, unwelcome guest. I was standing next to my husband, Caleb Miller, but he was 1,000 miles away, schmoozing his way through the Innovators Gala. This was his night, his room. The air in the D.C. ballroom was thick with ambition and the smell of expensive perfume. Caleb, the brilliant CEO of Orison Logistics, was the man of the hour. His tech startup was on the verge of landing a massive federal contract with FEMA, the kind of deal that turns millionaires into billionaires. And I, Eliza Thorne Miller, was just part of the set dressing. I clutched a glass of sparkling water, the bubbles doing nothing to settle my stomach. I am my father's daughter, the daughter of retired General Marcus Thorne. I grew up with discipline, honor, and duty. This world of shifting alliances, fake smiles, and venture capitalists who looked at you like you were a line item on a budget sheet. It made my skin crawl. I felt like a fraud, a prop Caleb wheeled out when he needed the Thorne name to open a door or legitimize his ambition. He was working the room, a shark in a custom suit, his hand never leaving the small of my back. But his touch felt performative, cold. His real attention was elsewhere. It was on Sophia, his director of human resources. She was everything I was not: sleek, sharp, and utterly at home in this venomous garden. She wasn't just attending, she was co-hosting. I watched her glide up to Caleb, her red dress a warning. She didn't hesitate. She reached up, right in front of a senator and his wife, and straightened Caleb's bow tie. Her fingers lingered on his lapel. "The keynote speaker is looking for you, boss," she murmured, but her voice was low, intimate, meant only for him. Caleb smiled, a genuine smile I hadn't seen directed at me in weeks. He leaned in, whispering something back that made her laugh, a sharp, proprietary sound. She looked like the CEO's wife, and I looked like the +1 who got lost. A wave of dizziness washed over me, a bitter mix of morning sickness and sudden, piercing suspicion. I needed air. Now. "I'm just going to step outside for a moment," I whispered to Caleb. He barely turned. "Sure, honey. Don't be long. Congressman Davies is on his way." I slipped away, unnoticed, pushing through the heavy doors that led to a long marble balcony overlooking the Potomac. The cold November air was a shock, a welcome slap in the face. I leaned against the balustrade, closing my eyes, taking one deep, shuddering breath. Then I heard them. The voices were coming from the adjacent alcove, separated from mine by a tall, thin partition of frosted glass. I recognized his laugh, first that low, charming sound that had once made me feel safe. "I'm tired of pretending." Sophia's voice was not the professional purr from inside. It was raw, impatient. "When are you dumping that little hick?" My blood turned to ice. Hick, is that what they called me? The girl from rural Virginia, the general's quiet daughter. I pressed my ear closer, my body rigid, my breath caught in my throat. Then Caleb spoke. His voice was not angry. It was worse. It was placating. It was the voice he used on me when he wanted something. "Just a little longer, baby." Baby. The word hit me like a physical blow. We just need her father, General Thorne, to nod yes on that FEMA contract. His voice was a smooth, reasonable poison. After that, this company and I are all yours. The glass of water slipped from my numb fingers. It hit the marble floor with a dull, wet thud, not a shatter. Inside the ballroom, the orchestra swelled, perfectly masking the sound of my world ending. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there, frozen in the cold night air, as the two people I trusted most plotted the end of my life. I don't remember the drive back to Potomac. The headlights of other cars were just smears of light in the darkness, my hands gripping the wheel while my mind replayed his words. Just a little longer. Baby. After that, this company and I are all yours. Caleb texted me as I pulled into our long, dark driveway. Just landed the Davies pitch. Going to be late. Networking. Networking. That's what he called it. The word was a sick joke. I walked into the cold, empty house. Our house. The one my family's money had been the down payment for. And suddenly, all the little lies I had swallowed became poison in my throat. The weekend strategy sessions in Annapolis. The urgent work calls that always happened at 2 a.m. Forcing him to take a walk outside. The way he started password protecting his laptop, claiming investor security, even though I had been his first investor. I remembered an email I'd seen by accident a month ago, a confirmation from a high-end property management company, a penthouse in Georgetown. I had asked him about it, my voice light, casual. "Oh, that," he'd said, not looking up from his phone. "It's just a company apartment, for clients, cheaper than a hotel." It all made sense now. The lies were not individual bricks, they were a foundation. I was fueled by a terrible, clear-headed energy. I walked straight to his home office, the one room in the house that was off-limits. He kept it locked. Always. "It's where I have sensitive calls. Eliza, you understand? National security adjacent." He'd even used my father's world against me to build his own. The key was where it always was, under the antique globe on his library table. I let myself in. The room smelled like hem leather and expensive cologne. It was meticulous. A giant, framed photo of us on our wedding day sat on the shelf. I looked at my own smiling face, the naive girl who thought this was a partnership. I moved the photo aside. The hidden safe was built into the wall behind it. My fingers were shaking, but my mind was sharp. I typed in the code, my birthday. Access denied. I tried our anniversary. Access denied. I stood there, thinking. He was arrogant. He was a creature of habit. And he was in love with her. I had seen her birthday. It was on a company-wide email calendar I'd helped him set up. Team building, he'd called it. I typed in the date, October 23rd. The safe clicked open. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would break a rib. I wasn't sure what I expected to find. Love letters, a secret bank account. It was worse. There were no personal items, just a stack of legal documents. I pulled them out, my hands trembling. The first was a co-founder's agreement. My blood ran cold. It was dated 2 years ago, before he'd even proposed to me. It named Sophia as a co-founder and silent partner of Orison Logistics, granting her 40% of all company shares. 40%! It was a stake hidden from every other investor, from the IRS, and from me. I kept digging. Underneath it was a simple 3-page memo. It wasn't a legal document. It was a plan. My name was in the first paragraph. Phase 1 Secure E. Thorn. Phase 2 Leverage Thorn FEMA connection via General M. Thorn. Phase 3 Post-contract initiate exit strategy from marriage. Cite irreconcilable differences. Secure full control of Orison, pending Sophia's share dilution. It was all there. A business plan for destroying my life. He was going to use me to get to my father, secure the contract, and then throw me away. He was even planning to double-cross her in the end. I felt a sharp, sudden sensation in my abdomen. It wasn't pain. It was a flutter, a definite, tiny kick. I gasped, my hand flying to my stomach. The baby. My baby. In that instant, the crushing weight of the betrayal didn't disappear, but it crystallized. The grief, the shock, the heartbreak, it all froze solid. And underneath that ice, something new sparked to life. It was cold, it was hard, and it was utterly furious. It was my father's daughter waking up. Caleb wasn't just a cheating husband, he was an enemy, and he had no idea what kind of war he had just started. I didn't sleep. I don't think I even moved. I just sat in his oversized leather chair, in his forbidden office, as the first gray light of dawn filtered through the blinds, illuminating the stack of documents on his desk. The cold rage from the night before had solidified into something heavy and sharp in my chest. I watched the plan for my disposal. Phase 3. Initiate exit strategy, as the rising sun made the ink look almost brown. The garage door whined open just before 6 in the morning. I heard his keys hit the glass bowl in the foyer, a cheerful metallic clink. He was humming. He must have closed the deal. "Eliza," he called out, his voice buoyant. "You're up early, honey." I heard his footsteps pause on the hardwood. He must have seen the light spilling from the office. He appeared in the doorway, still in his suit from the gala, his tie loosened. The smile on his face was energetic, triumphant. It died instantly when he saw me. His eyes went from my face, to the open safe, to the documents spread across his desk. I was expecting a flash of panic. I was prepared for shouting, for accusations, for desperate, clumsy denials. I got none of that. Caleb Miller just stood there for a long, silent moment. Then he sighed. It was not the gasp of a man caught. It was a sigh of profound, weary disappointment. He ran his hand through his hair and looked at me, his eyes full of a terrible, practiced sadness. "I really, truly hoped you would never have to find out this way," he said. His voice was soft. My throat was so tight I could barely speak. "Find out what I managed," my voice a dry rasp. "That I'm just a phase in your business plan, that you're giving my 40% of our company to your mistress." I shoved the co-founder agreement toward him. He didn't look at the paper. He looked at me with an expression of deep hurt. "That," he said, walking slowly into the room, "is exactly what I have been trying to protect you from." I just stared. "Eliza," he said, perching on the edge of the desk, "not too close. Sophia is not my lover. She is unwell. She's obsessed, and she's been blackmailing me for almost a year." The lie was so fast, so smooth, it almost knocked the breath out of me. "She's been embezzling money," he continued, his voice gaining a righteous, angry edge. "She faked that agreement. She's been siphoning accounts, trying to create this fantasy world where she's the true partner. She threatened to go public with these forged documents, to ruin us, to ruin your father's name unless I paid her off." He was painting a masterpiece of deception. He made himself the victim. "Why do you think I've been so stressed?" he said, his voice dropping. "Why I've been working day and night on this FEMA contract I had to get the company on solid footing. I was trying to build enough evidence to expose her, to get her arrested, without her blowing everything up. I kept it a secret." He looked away, as if ashamed. "I kept it a secret to protect you, to protect your father from the mudslinging. General's son-in-law accused of fraud. I couldn't let her do that to him. To us." He slid off the desk and knelt on the floor in front of me. He took my hands. His were cold. "My only weakness," he whispered, and I saw actual, real tears welling in his eyes. He was a performer of breathtaking skill. "My only sin was thinking I could handle this alone. I didn't want to burden you, not while you're pregnant. I thought I could fix it before you ever had to know. I am so sorry. Eliza, I'm so sorry I failed to protect you from this." For one terrible, sickening second, I believed him. The relief was so absolute, so tempting, that I almost collapsed. It explained everything. The late nights weren't betrayal, they were sacrifice. The secrecy wasn't deception, it was protection. I wanted to believe it so badly. My entire body ached with the need for it to be true. I was just about to cry, to apologize to him for ever doubting. And then he made his mistake. He saw the flicker of belief in my eyes. He saw me start to crack, and, like the predator he was, he moved in to secure the kill. "I'll prove it to you," he said, his voice hardening with resolve as he stood up. "I won't let her terrorize us anymore. I'll end this. Today." He pulled out his phone. "I'm going to set up a meeting. All three of us. Right now. You, me, and her. In a public place. I will make her confess everything to your face. You'll hear it from her own mouth." And just like that, the spell shattered. My father taught me about strategy. A man being blackmailed does not confidently arrange a face-to-face meeting with his blackmailer. A man who is truly afraid of exposure does not orchestrate a public confrontation. This wasn't an impulse. This was a script. This was the contingency plan they had rehearsed for the day I found out. The cold returned, sharper this time. I had to hide it. I had to bury the fury. I looked up at him, letting my eyes look watery and confused. "A meeting, Caleb. I don't know if I can. It's the only way, Eliza." He cupped my face. "It's the only way you'll know the truth and we can finally be free of her." I took a shaky breath, playing the part he'd written for me. "Okay," I whispered. "If you really think it will work." "Okay." His face flooded with relief. He thought I was his. He thought I was the stupid, trusting. Little Hick, his lover, had called me. "Thank you," he breathed, pulling me into a hug. I remained stiff, but he didn't seem to notice. He was too busy congratulating himself. As he held me, pressing my face into his shoulder, I slipped my free hand into my robe pocket. I found my phone, unlocked it with my thumb, and opened the voice memo app. "I'll set it for lunch," he said, pulling back to smile at me. "It will all be over soon. I promise." I nodded, my eyes downcast. "Whatever you think is best." I pressed the small red record button just as he turned away. The private cafe Caleb chose was quiet, all dark wood and hushed classical music. It was the perfect stage. My phone was in my coat pocket, the microphone on, the recording app draining my battery. I sat there, nursing a peppermint tea, my hands clasped tightly in my lap to stop them from shaking. I was playing the part of the wounded, betrayed wife who was willing to listen. Caleb sat beside me, his hand on my knee, a pantomime of support. "It's going to be okay," he murmured, loud enough for the phone to pick up. "We'll get through this." Then Sophia arrived. She looked pale, her eyes red and puffy. It was a masterful performance. She didn't even sit down. She just stood by the table, twisting her hands, and burst into tears. "Eliza, I am so sorry," she choked out. "I never wanted you to find out like this. I don't know what to say." "Just tell her the truth." "Sophia," Caleb said, his voice firm, like a disappointed older brother. "Tell her what you did." Sophia's confession tumbled out, perfectly matching the script Caleb had fed me that morning. She'd admired Caleb from afar for years. She worshipped his vision for Orison. She felt he wasn't being recognized properly. So, in a misguided attempt to prove her value, she had taken matters into her own hands. I set up the secret accounts. She wept, finally sinking into the chair opposite us. I forged the co-founder agreement. I thought if I could just manage that money better, show him how much I could grow it, that he would finally see me, see my worth. It was never about blackmail. I just loved him, from a distance. It was stupid. I'm so sorry. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. He never knew. Eliza, I swear it. He never knew about any of it until a few weeks ago, and when he found out, he was furious. He told me he was going to expose me. Caleb just sat there, shaking his head. The picture of a man burdened by a lunatic employee. It was flawless. But Sophia was a good actress. and she was warming to her role. She started to deviate from the script, her grief turning a little too real. He told me I was nothing, that he only ever loved. Caleb's hand, which had been resting on the table, moved. He placed 3 fingers, index, middle, and ring flat on the side of his white coffee mug. It was a simple, silent gesture. Sophia stopped, mid-sentence. Her breath hitched. She saw the signal. She looked down, collected herself, and when she looked back up, the performance was back in place. He only ever loved you, she finished, her voice now flat, hollow. I was crazy to think I had a chance. I'll sign whatever you need. I'll resign. Just please, don't press charges. I had it. The entire choreographed lie, and the silent moment of direction that proved it was a lie. I let out a shaky breath, summoning my own tears. I don't know what to say. I looked at Caleb, playing the confused, overwhelmed wife. This is a lot. I'm glad you told me. I stood up, grabbing my coat. I need some time. To think. Caleb's face was a mask of concern. Of course, honey. Take all the time you need. We're in this together. He stood to hug me. I didn't hug back. I walked out of the cafe. I got in my car. I watched them in the rearview mirror, still sitting at the table, their heads bent close together, finally having their real conversation. I did not drive home to Potomac. I got on I-66 and drove west, past the suburbs, past the battlefields, until the city skyline was gone. Replaced by the rolling hills and white fences of the Virginia countryside, it took me almost 3 hours. I pulled up the gravel driveway of my father's farm. The house is old, brick and stone, built to withstand anything. I found him where I always found him, in his study, a room that smelled of old books, pipe tobacco, and leather. Retired General Marcus Thorne was standing over a massive table, looking at old, sprawling topographic maps. He was a man of terrifying calm, his silence louder than most men's shouting. He didn't turn when I entered. "You're not here for a social call," he stated. "No, sir." My voice was shaking. "I need you to listen to something." I took out my phone and pressed play. I set it on the map table. He listened, his face impassive, as the tinny sounds of Sophia's fake sobs and Caleb's supportive murmurs filled the room. He didn't react. "Here," I said, fast-forwarding. "This is the part. Watch." I replayed the section where Sophia went off script. He told me I was nothing. Then, the recording went silent for 2 full seconds, except for the clink of porcelain as Caleb's fingers tapped the mug. Then, "He only ever loved you." My father replayed that 5-second clip. Once, twice. "He gave her a hand signal," I said. 3 fingers on the cup. She stopped talking immediately. My father nodded slowly, his eyes still on his maps. "Hand signal. Basic counter-intel." He traced a ridgeline on the map with his finger. "He learned it somewhere. What does it mean?" He finally looked up at me. His eyes were the color of cold steel. "It means he's not just a liar. He's disciplined. He's been trained, or he's trained himself. He has operational protocols." "Father," I said, the terrible weight of the last 24 hours crushing me. "He's cheating on me. He's using me to get to you, for the FEMA contract. It was all a plan. I expected him to be angry. I expected him to rage. Instead, he looked almost vindicated. I never trusted him. Eliza," he said, his voice flat. "I've had Orison under surveillance for 6 months. My blood stopped. "What you knew?" "I knew he was dirty," my father said, walking to his desk. "His logistics algorithms looked too good, his projections too clean. We suspected he was building a shell company." He turned back to me, and the last piece of the puzzle fell into place with sickening clarity. "That FEMA contract," my father said, "the one he's so desperate to land, it's not real. It's bait. My bait. I've been investigating him myself. I stared at him, my mind reeling. The whole thing, the gala, the schmoozing, the reason for my marriage. It was all a game. You knew, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. And you let me. His face softened for the first time. He stepped toward me. I knew he was a snake, Eliza. I didn't know he had bitten you. I thought I could contain him, expose him, and protect you from the fallout. He put a heavy hand on my shoulder. But he didn't just bite you. He put his venom in my grandchild. Now, we pull its fangs. Together. I drove back to Potomac with a hollow pit in my stomach. The righteous anger from my father's study had cooled into a hard, strategic resolve. I was no longer just a wife. I was a soldier, and I had my orders. When I walked in, Caleb was in the kitchen, making coffee. He looked up, his face a mask of anxious relief, like a man who'd been holding his breath. "Eliza," he said, moving toward me. "You were gone so long. I was worried." I let him pull me into a hug. I let my body remain just pliant enough, letting him feel my faked exhaustion. I leaned into his chest and let out a single, calculated sob. "I just drove," I whispered, my voice muffled against his shirt. "I needed to think about what she said, about us." He stroked my hair. "And what did you decide?" he asked, his voice the perfect blend of hopeful and wary. I pulled back, looking into his eyes. I made mine look broken. "I believe you, Caleb. I do. It's just..." I let a tear fall. "It's so much. To know she was that close, that she had that much power, it makes me feel unsafe. I feel like our whole life is built on something I don't even understand." No, baby," he said, cupping my face. "It's over. I'll handle her." "But will you?" I countered, letting a note of desperate, wifely fear enter my voice. "She faked a 40% co-founder agreement. What else is in there? What else did she do? How do I know we're not going to lose everything?" I was using his own script, turning his lie into my leverage. I can't just not know. If we're going to rebuild trust, I need total transparency. I need to see what she did. I took a deep breath. "I want to help you," I said. "You're trying to protect this family. Let me protect it with you. Give me access to the company servers. Let me help you find all the evidence against her." His eyes searched mine. I could see the cogs turning. He saw a broken, pliable wife, terrified for her financial security, suddenly desperate to align with him. He saw an ally. He saw. I realized with a sickening lurch, the hick he could easily manipulate. He smiled, a slow, reassuring smile that was pure poison. "Of course," he said. "You're right. You deserve to see it all." The next day, he set me up with a limited access portal. "This will let you see all of Sophia's internal files and HR documents," he explained, while keeping the sensitive core tech partitioned off. For security. I spent the day in his office, clicking through useless HR memos and faked expense reports, playing the part of the diligent, worried wife. He checked on me twice, bringing me tea, pleased with his own genius. He went to bed at 11. At midnight, I went back to the office, the lights off. My father had given me a simple, black USB drive. "It's not just a drive," he'd said. "It's a key. Plug it into his network. It will bypass his partitions and copy his backup servers, all of them. It will take time." I plugged it in. The small LED blinked, a tiny, silent heartbeat. I watched the progress bar on the simple interface my father's tech team had built. It crawled. 1%, 2%. It felt like hours. I sat there in the dark, my hand on my stomach, thinking about the baby, thinking about the web of lies I was now a part of. By 4 a.m., it was done. I didn't sleep. I took the drive to the guest room and plugged it into my personal laptop, a laptop my father had cleaned for me. The files were enormous, terabytes of data, but the drive had also installed a search protocol. I didn't need to look for love letters. I looked for the money. I found the real bank accounts, the offshore entities, the payments to shell corporations. But then I found something else. It was a folder labeled Project Chimera. Inside wasn't just the RSN logistics algorithm. It was an evolved version, something far more powerful, with military applications. And it was attached to a series of encrypted emails. The recipient wasn't a domestic investor. The domain was foreign, a rival nation. He wasn't just cheating on me. He wasn't just defrauding the government for a FEMA contract. Caleb was selling our technology. He was committing economic espionage. This wasn't about adultery or greed. This was about treason. The scale of it made me sick. I ran to the bathroom, vomiting up the tea and the bile. This was so much bigger than I was. My father's investigation wasn't just about a dirty son-in-law. It was about a national security threat. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely close the laptop. The room was spinning. The next morning, I called my OB/GYN. I used the excuse of the nausea and stress. I needed to see the doctor. I needed to know, in the middle of all this death and betrayal, that the one life I was responsible for was okay. I lay on the table, the paper crinkling beneath me. The doctor, a kind woman named Dr. Eris, squirted the cold gel on my stomach. "Let's just take a look, Eliza. See how this little one is doing." She moved the transducer. The sound of a fast, strong heartbeat filled the room. The thump, the thump, the thump. I let out a breath I'd been holding since the gala. "Thank God." Dr. Eris went quiet, her brows furrowing as she looked at the screen. She moved the transducer again. "Eliza," she said, her voice careful. "Everything looks wonderful. The heartbeat is strong." She paused, then smiled. "And so is the other one." I stared at her. "The what?" "You're having twins," she said, turning the screen toward me. "Look, there's baby A, and right there, baby B, both perfectly healthy. 2 heartbeats, 2 lives. I wasn't just fighting for myself or my father's honor anymore. I was a mother protecting her children. And the urgency of my mission, the need to take Caleb down, didn't just double. It became absolute. I had to tell him about the twins. The lie of our marriage was built on my performance as the happy, naive, pregnant wife. I waited until that evening, catching him as he poured his customary end-of-day whiskey. "I went to the doctor today," I said, trying to inject a note of breathless wonder into my voice. "The nausea has been so bad." "And?" he asked, not turning from the bar. "Is the baby okay?" "The baby is fine," I said, "and so is the other one." He stopped pouring. He turned around slowly. "What did you just say?" "We're having twins, Caleb, 2 heartbeats, both strong." I watched his face, searching for the genuine shock or joy of a normal man. I saw neither. His eyes, for just 1 second, went cold and sharp. I could see the gears turning, the rapid calculation of this new asset. Then, the mask of the delighted father slammed into place. He rushed over, pulling me into a hug that felt more like a capture. "Twins," he laughed, a sound that was too loud for the room. "My God, Eliza, twins." He pulled back, his hands on my shoulders, his eyes gleaming. "Well," he said, winking, "I guess that's just double the insurance." "Right." He meant it as a joke, but I heard the ledger. He didn't see children. He saw collateral. He saw 2 more chains to bind me, and more importantly, to bind my father. He believed, in his profound arrogance, that General Thorne would never let the father of his twin grandchildren fail. He thought he had just won the game. He was wrong. The game was turning against him on all fronts. While I was busy copying his life's work, my limited server access had not gone unnoticed. Sophia, still technically employed while Caleb gathered evidence against her. saw my user logs. She didn't know about my father, or the espionage, or the USB drive. She saw a much simpler, more brutal betrayal. She saw the wife she despised suddenly getting access to her files. She put the pieces together, but she got the wrong picture. She thought Caleb was setting her up to be the sole scapegoat, using me, his gullible wife, to do the dirty work. She thought he was cleaning house, planning to keep the company, the contract, and me, and leave her with nothing but a prison sentence. Her panic began to bleed through. My phone lit up with a text from a blocked number. You think you're smart. You aren't. An hour later, another one. He's using you. You stupid little fool. He's going to pin everything on me, and you're next. Then, late at night, a third. You don't know what he is. You don't know what he's capable of. Get out while you can. She was terrified, and a terrified, cornered person was a dangerous, unpredictable variable. But Caleb was the one who was truly unraveling. The pressure was mounting from every side. My father's team was slow-walking the FEMA contract his bait, citing endless bureaucratic red tape. His foreign contacts were getting impatient, demanding the Project Chimera algorithm he'd already taken payment for. And at home, he had a paranoid mistress blowing up his phone, and a pregnant with twins wife who was suddenly asking too many questions about the books. The facade of the charming CEO was cracking. It happened 3 nights after the doctor's appointment. We were in the kitchen, ostensibly finalizing the guest list for the massive charity fundraiser we were hosting. His last-ditch effort to prove his political clout. "Did you talk to your father today?" he asked, his voice sharp, his eyes glued to his tablet. "We spoke for a few minutes," I said carefully, stacking envelopes. "And did you tell him?" "Eliza, did you explain that the FEMA review is stalled in committee? Did you tell him to make the call and fix it?" "Caleb, I can't tell him to do anything. He's a general, not my personal assistant. It doesn't work that way." "Well, it needs to work that way," he snapped. "Do you have any idea the kind of pressure I'm under? I have investors. I have deadlines. I have foreign agents waiting for state secrets." I thought, "He said it's just a standard review," I said, my voice deliberately calm. "These things take time." "I don't have time," he roared, his voice echoing in the marble kitchen. And in one violent, sudden movement, he hurled his tablet across the room. He wasn't aiming at me, but it didn't matter. The device flew past my head, missing me by inches, and smashed against the tile backsplash. Glass and plastic exploded outward, skittering across the floor. We both froze. The sound of my own sharp inhale was the only thing in the silence. His chest was heaving. He didn't look at the shattered tablet. He looked at me. His eyes were not apologetic. They were cold. "You," he seethed, jabbing a finger at me. "Will call your father in the morning, and you will tell him to push that contract through. You will make him do it. Immediately." He turned, straightened his cuffs, and walked into his office, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. My hands were shaking, but my mind was ice. This was over. The investigation was no longer a cold, strategic operation. He had crossed a line. He was volatile, and I had 2 lives inside me to protect. I walked to the guest bathroom, the one with the loudest vent fan, locked the door, and turned on the shower. I pulled the small, encrypted device my father had given me from its hiding place. It was for emergencies only. This was an emergency. I typed the simple, pre-arranged code. Subject fundraiser message phase 2. He is unstable. I need an exit. I hit send. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic rhythm against the steady beat of the shower. A minute later, my device buzzed once. The reply was 5 words. Acknowledged. Tonight. The fundraiser. Be ready. The air in our Potomac home was thick with the scent of lilies and entitlement. The fundraiser was Caleb's last stand, his final attempt to wield the power of our Name My Name to impress the Washington elite he so desperately craved. I stood by his side in a velvet dress that was straining at the seams, a fixed smile on my face, my hand resting on the small swell of my stomach. I was no longer a wife. I was a prop. Be ready. My father's message had said, I was ready. Caleb was working the room, projecting a frantic, high-wattage charm. He was shaking hands with a senator when his phone buzzed. He glanced down. I saw his face tighten. It was a text from his assistant. What is it? I murmured, playing the supportive spouse. His eyes were cold. Your father's aide just called the office. He's unavoidably detained at the Pentagon. He won't be coming. I feigned disappointment. Oh, no. And he was the guest of honor. Caleb's smile didn't waver, but his voice was a venomous whisper meant only for me. He's sending a message. That bait contract just failed. He gripped my arm, his fingers digging into my elbow, his knuckles white. This is your fault. Caleb, you're hurting me. You'd better hope. He began, but he never finished the threat, because at that exact moment, there was a commotion at the grand entrance. A woman's voice, loud, sharp, and decidedly drunk, cut through the string quartet. Where is he? I know he's in here. Caleb, Sophia. She was not invited. She looked like a ghost of the woman from the gala, her designer dress rumpled, her eyes wild with mascara-stained tears. She was holding a bottle of champagne by the neck, like a club. The party died. 100 conversations stopped. Caleb froze, his face a mask of pure horror. This was the one variable he hadn't controlled. Sophia, you need to leave, Caleb said, striding toward her, his voice a low command. Leave, she shrieked, laughing. After you gave her access, after you tried to set me up, you promised me, Caleb, you promised. This was my chance. While every eye in the room was on Caleb and his unraveling mistress, I slipped away. My father's instructions were clear. Go to the library. Secure the door. Wait. I had one last thing to do. I hurried to the library, a room that overlooked the main hall from a short, 10-step flight of marble stairs. I closed the heavy oak doors, but didn't lock them. I went to the antique globe in the corner, my hands shaking. I twisted the base, opening a small, hidden compartment where I had hidden my passport and a small envelope of cash. I grabbed them, shoving them into the small clutch I was carrying. The doors behind me burst open. I spun around. Sophia stood there, swaying, her face a grotesque mask of rage. You, she spat. The little hick. You think you've won. Sophia, you're drunk, I said, my voice as calm as I could make it. I started to move toward the stairs, toward the party, toward safety. Don't you walk away from me, she screamed, grabbing my arm. He was mine. We had a plan. He promised me. He said he would leave you as soon as that stupid contract was signed. The pain in her voice was so raw, so real. For a second, I saw her not as a rival, but as another victim. Sophia, I said, my voice gentle. He was lying to you, just like he lied to me. There is no contract. It was never real. He used us both. I tried to pull my arm free. He wouldn't, she whispered, her eyes wide with denial. Then the denial shattered, replaced by a terrible, empty fury. Liar, she shrieked. You're just like him. You're trying to cut me out. You took him. You took the company. You took everything. She lunged at me. I was standing at the very top of those marble steps. The party was frozen below, a sea of shocked faces looking up at us. I had nowhere to go. She didn't punch me. She shoved me. Her hands, her manicured, sharp-nailed hands, slammed directly into the center of my stomach, a hard, vicious, targeted push designed to do one thing. Time stopped. I felt her malice more than the impact. Her face was inches from mine, contorted with a hate so pure it was breathless. I hope you lose them, she screamed, the sound tearing from her throat. If I can't have him, neither can you. And then I was falling, My back hit the edge of a marble step, a hard, sickening crack that sent a bolt of white-hot agony through me. I tumbled, not in a clean fall, but in a chaotic, joint-jarring roll. My arms flailed, trying to protect my stomach, but the momentum was too much. I landed at the bottom of the 10 steps, splayed on the polished floor of the grand hall. The string quartet stopped. The murmur of 100 conversations died. There was only a vast, echoing silence, broken by a single sharp gasp from someone in the crowd. I tried to sit up, to breathe, but the air was knocked from my lungs. And then I felt it. A hot, wet rush. I looked down. A dark, crimson stain was spreading rapidly across the pale blue velvet of my dress. "No," I whispered. "Not my babies. Please, God, not my babies." Across the room, I saw Caleb. His face was a thundercloud of pure fury. He moved, fast. The guests parted, thinking he was rushing to his fallen, pregnant wife. He wasn't. He stormed right past me. He didn't even look down. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his eyes locked on Sophia, who was standing at the top, frozen, her hands over her mouth in a parody of shock. He reached her. He didn't check if she was okay. He didn't grab her. He slapped her. The sound was like a gunshot in the silent room, a sharp, violent crack that echoed off the marble. "You idiot!" He screamed, his voice no longer the smooth, charming CEO. This was his real voice, raw, vicious. You stupid, stupid fool, you've ruined everything." He wasn't yelling at a woman who had just assaulted his wife. He was yelling at an employee who had blown a deal. He didn't say, "What did you do?" He said, "You've ruined everything." The plan, not the people. A flash of blue light from the crowd, someone's phone. Caleb's head snapped toward the light. He saw them, the senator, the investors, the wives, all of them, their phones out, recording. The blood drained from his face. He finally understood the tactical error he had made. In a split second, the mask was back, his face contorted into a mask of anguish. "Eliza!" he shouted, as if just now seeing me. He scrambled down the stairs, tripping on the last one, and fell to his knees beside me. I was lying in a growing pool of my own blood. I could feel the life, the lives, draining out of me. "Please," I moaned, the words a bloody froth. "Caleb, call 911, the babies. My babies." "Shh, shh, I'm here, he said, his voice loud, performative, for the cameras he knew were watching. He looked around wildly, a husband in panic. "Someone call an ambulance. My wife. My baby." He leaned in close. The crowd would see a terrified husband, whispering words of comfort, shielding his wife's modesty from the prying eyes. His hand stroked my hair, but his grip was iron. He angled his head, his mouth close to my ear, his body blocking the view. The cameras would see a kiss, a prayer. I saw the truth. His voice was not a whisper. It was a hiss, colder than ice. It cut through my pain, through my terror. "You should really get your tubes tied." He breathed into my ear, his lips barely moving. "It would save us all a lot of trouble." I stared at him, my vision tunneling. This was a monster, not a man. "And," he continued, a note of almost casual cruelty in his voice, "you can adopt our baby." The words didn't make sense. "Our baby." He saw my confusion. He smiled, a small, tight smile of pure spite. "Sophia's. She's 6 weeks along. We were going to tell you after the divorce. But I guess this works, too." He had done it. He had found the one final, unthinkable way to break me. As I lay there, bleeding out my own children, he offered me his mistresses. He pulled back, his face a perfect picture of grief for the room. "Stay with me, Eliza. Stay with me. But he didn't know. He didn't know about my father's paranoia. He didn't know about the final safety precaution my father had insisted on. It's just a microphone. Eliza, my father had said that afternoon, clipping a tiny, nearly invisible device to the inside of my dress, right over my heart. It's live. My team is listening. Just in case you need that exit. Caleb's confession. His cold-blooded, monstrous whisper, meant only for me, had not gone to my ear alone. It had been broadcast, clear as a bell, to a federal listening post. He thought he was whispering his victory. He was signing his confession. I stared up at him. The pain from the fall, the fear for my babies, it all evaporated, replaced by a blast of Arctic cold. Adopt our baby. He was a creature from a depth I could not have imagined. I had thought I knew what evil was. I had been a fool. Caleb, oblivious, finished his performance. He pulled back from my ear, his face a mask of tragedy, and looked up at the stunned crowd. "Why is no one calling for help?" he screamed, his voice breaking with magnificent, false panic. "My wife is bleeding. Someone call an ambulance." A woman in the front row was already on the phone, her voice shaking as she relayed our address. "They're on their way." "Eliza!" he yelled, for the benefit of the crowd. "Just hold on. I'm right here. I've got you." He took my hand, his grip tight, his eyes scanning the room, already managing the optics of the situation. He was the hero, the devoted husband. He was still playing that role when the lights came. It was not the high, frantic wail of a local ambulance. It was just light, red and blue, sweeping silently across the polished floors, flashing over the faces of the shocked guests. It had not been 5 minutes. The sound of heavy vehicles crunching on the gravel of our driveway, moving too fast. Then, the slamming of multiple heavy doors. Through the grand windows, I saw them, not an ambulance. 2 black, unmarked SUVs, blocking the entire driveway, sealing us in. The doors burst open and men in black tactical vests, the letters FBI stamped in white across their chests, poured out, and behind them, walking with a calm, unhurried authority, was my father. General Marcus Thorne was in a civilian suit, but he moved with the same terrifying power as if he were in full dress uniform. Caleb was still kneeling beside me, his hand clutching mine. He looked up, confused by the lack of sirens. He saw the vests. He saw the agents fanning out, securing the perimeter. And then he saw my father. The blood drained from his face. The color, the confidence, the performance, it all vanished, leaving a pale, hollow-eyed shell. He understood. A lead agent, a tall man with a face carved from granite, stepped into the hall. He glanced at Sophia, who was being held by 2 of the party's private security guards, and then his eyes locked on Caleb. He walked right past me. "Caleb Miller," the agent said, his voice booming in the silent hall. Caleb's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Caleb Miller," the agent repeated, "you are under arrest for economic espionage, conspiracy to defraud the United States government, and wire fraud." Agents were already moving, securing his arms, pulling him to his feet. My father did not look at him. He did not spare a single glance for the man being cuffed. His eyes were only on me. He walked past the chaos, past the FBI agents, past his son-in-law, and knelt where Caleb had been. At his signal, 2 men medics. I realized, in federal tactical gear moved in with a stretcher. They were efficient, their hands gentle but firm as they assessed me. "Thorne!" Caleb started babbling, the cuffs snapping onto his wrists. "General, wait. This is a mistake. It's a misunderstanding, Sophia. It was all her." He twisted against the agents, his eyes wild, finally landing on me. "Eliza. Tell your father, Eliza. Talk to him." My father looked down at me. The medics were carefully preparing to lift me. His face was granite, but his eyes were filled with a cold, righteous fire. He ignored Caleb's cries. Slowly, my father reached toward my dress. His fingers, large and sure, moved to the collar, right over my heart. He unclipped the small black device. It was still on, still transmitting. He held it up. It was tiny, almost invisible, dangling from his fingers. The small red light was still blinking. Caleb went silent. My father held the microphone in the air, a final piece of evidence for the entire room to see. He turned, not to Caleb, but to the lead agent. "We heard him," my father said, his voice clear and cold, cutting through the entire awful scene. "We heard every word." The lights of the ambulance were a red and blue blur against the night sky. They didn't take me to the local hospital. My father's presence meant I was routed to Walter Reed. The efficiency was terrifying. I was in a trauma room, surrounded by military medical staff, before I could even process the flashing lights. All I could feel was the sticky, warm blood and a cramping, rolling terror that I was losing them. "I'm bleeding," I kept saying, to anyone. "My babies. I'm having twins." The doctor, a Navy captain, was all business. "We know, Mrs. Miller. We're going to find out what's happening." She moved the cold ultrasound transducer across my stomach. I turned my head away, squeezing my eyes shut, bracing for the silence that would mean their hearts had stopped. I prayed. I have never prayed so hard. And then I heard it. A fast, strong thump, thump, thump. The doctor moved the transducer. "There's baby A," and then, a moment later, "And there's baby B, also strong." She let out a breath. "You have a subchorionic hematoma. Eliza. The fall caused some bleeding, but it's not the babies. The placentas are secure. You and the twins are stable." The tears that came weren't from sadness or relief. They were just the end. The dam of adrenaline and fear I'd been holding back for weeks finally broke. They were safe. I was safe. And now, the war could begin. My father came in hours later. I was in a private room, the exhaustion a lead blanket on my limbs. He was carrying a slim leather briefcase. "Our lawyer has been busy," he said, not as a father, but as a commanding officer. He sat down and laid out a stack of documents on the rolling table: divorce papers, a petition for an emergency restraining order, a complete motion to nullify the marriage. "They were prepared last week," he said, "waiting for your signal." While I was being examined, Caleb was being dismantled. My father told me how it happened. He was in a cold, white interrogation room at the FBI field office. He had already asked for his lawyer. He was still trying to perform, playing the role of the shocked, aggrieved husband. They didn't start with the espionage. They started with the party. They showed him the videos. Not one, but 3, from different guests' phones. They showed Sophia lunging. They showed my fall. They showed him striding past me to slap his mistress. "She's unhinged," Caleb said, his voice hoarse. "She's been blackmailing me. I told Eliza. She attacked my wife. I was in shock." "We understand," the lead agent said. "A terrible domestic tragedy." And then he pressed play on a digital audio recorder. He played the microphone feed from my dress. The room was silent, and then Caleb's own voice filled it, cold, clear, and monstrous. "You should really get your tubes tied and adopt our baby, Sophia's. She's 6 weeks along." My father said Caleb just stared at the speaker. His performance, his charm, his entire reality just evaporated. He had nothing left. Then the agent placed my USB drive on the table. "And now," he said, "let's talk about Project Chimera and your partners overseas." His lawyer arrived 20 minutes later. He read the file. He saw the evidence of economic espionage. He saw the transcript of the audio from my dress. He looked at Caleb. "You have one move," he said. "You will not see a jury. You will plead guilty to everything to avoid a treason charge and a life sentence. You will give them whatever they want. And they wanted everything. Caleb, to avoid dying in a supermax prison, agreed. He pled guilty to all federal charges, guaranteeing him a minimum of 50 years. He signed away all rights to Orison Logistics, turning the company and all its assets over to the federal government, and he signed the document terminating his parental rights. He knew the twins were his. He signed them away, as if they were a bad investment. Sophia, facing her own charges for aggravated assault, sang like a canary. She testified against Caleb, painting him as a coercive monster, and in her final act of self-preservation, she told the police the baby she was carrying wasn't Caleb's. It was some other executive she'd had a fling with, another lie, to save herself from his wreckage. I had one final move. My lawyers used the document I'd found in his safe, the hidden, fraudulent 40% co-founder agreement with Sophia. We argued, successfully, that our entire marriage was a business transaction, that it was fraud from the start. The judge agreed, nullifying the union completely, protecting all of my family's assets from any future claim. My father was there in the hospital room when the final papers were brought in. The bleeding had stopped. The sun was streaming through the window. He put a pen on the tray table. "It's over. Eliza," he said. I looked at the signature line. I picked up the pen and signed my name. Eliza Thorne. I placed my hand on my stomach, feeling the faint, fluttering promise of the 2 lives inside me, the lives I had fought for. "No, Dad," I said, meeting his gaze. "It's not over." I looked down at my hands, at the pen, at the new, clean signature. "It's just beginning. Thank you so much for listening to my story." I'd love to know where in the world you are listening from, so please comment below and share your thoughts. If you want to hear more stories like this, please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories. Make sure to like this video, and if you really want to support the channel, hit that hype button to help this story get heard by more people.